The Empire strikes. The galaxy had always been a place of conflict, but nothing had prepared humanity for what was coming. One moment, Earth was living in peace, continuing its progress in science, technology, and exploration. The next moment, a dark shadow appeared in the sky, an enemy far beyond anything humanity had ever seen. The Empire had arrived. It was not a single ship that appeared, but an entire fleet, massive, intimidating, and powerful. The ships seemed to block out the stars as they moved into Earth's orbit. There was no warning, no sign that they were coming. One moment, the sky was clear, and the next, the Earth was surrounded by the largest armada humanity had ever imagined. It was as if the stars themselves had been taken over by the Empire. The people on Earth were stunned. No one knew how to react at first. The news networks were the first to break the silence. "This is not a drill," the reporters said in trembling voices. "The Empire has arrived." People turned to their screens, their faces filled with fear and confusion. What did this mean? Who were these beings, and why were they here? Humanity had no answers. In military command centers around the world, generals and leaders tried to make sense of the situation. The Empire's fleet was too large to fight with anything Earth had. It was overwhelming. Even the best military forces on the planet didn't stand a chance against the weapons they could see from the Empire's ships. The size alone was enough to make the bravest soldiers feel small. The leaders of the world gathered in emergency meetings. Plans were drawn up, strategies discussed, but nothing seemed right. The Empire's ships didn't move like any ships they had seen before. The technology they had was far superior to anything Earth had. Weapons capable of destroying entire cities with a single shot were already pointed at the planet. Humanity was helpless. But even in the face of fear, there was something else. Something strange. While panic was spreading in every corner of the world, there were whispers of something else. Whispers of humanity's resolve. The human race had faced challenges before, many times. They had fought wars, survived pandemics, and overcome impossible odds. Now, standing against the Empire, the people of Earth weren't going to back down. In underground bunkers, scientists and engineers were already at work. They were determined to find a way to fight back, but they knew it wouldn't be easy. The Empire's fleet had weapons beyond their wildest dreams. Even the most advanced human technology looked like children's toys compared to what the Empire had. Still, they worked in secret, building and designing whatever they could. They weren't about to give up without a fight. Meanwhile, the cities on Earth were being evacuated. People packed their things, trying to flee to safe zones, while others sat glued to their screens, waiting for updates. The fear was everywhere. Governments made statements, urging people to stay calm, to trust in their military forces. But deep down, everyone knew the truth. The Empire's power was far beyond anything they could ever imagine. As the days passed, Earth's military began to launch a series of desperate attacks. Fighter jets and missiles were sent to confront the Empire's ships, but they barely made a dent. Every time an attack was launched, the Empire's ships retaliated with terrifying force. Cities were destroyed. The skies burned. There was no escaping their wrath. The Empire's ships didn't just attack. They hovered, waiting, watching, as if they were testing humanity. Their leaders were silent, and for a long time, no one knew what they wanted. They could have destroyed the Earth at any moment, yet they didn't. Instead, they let humanity struggle, perhaps in an effort to see what they were made of. Or perhaps they were waiting for the humans to make the first move. Humanity was not sure whether to run or to fight. It seemed that either choice would lead to their destruction. Yet, despite the overwhelming odds, a strange thing began to happen. Some people refused to run. They would not accept defeat. Military leaders began to give speeches, rallying the people to resist. They spoke of Earth's strength, of the human spirit, of the will to survive. And strangely enough, those words seemed to spark something deep inside the people of Earth. They began to fight back, not with advanced weapons or technology, but with their hearts. The people weren't just afraid anymore. They were angry. Angry that their world, their home, was being destroyed. Angry that they had been pushed to the brink. And that anger began to fuel them. One of the greatest generals of the time, General Stevens, stood in front of a large crowd of soldiers. His voice was steady, his eyes fierce. "We may not have their technology, we may not have their ships, but we have something they don't," he said. "We have each other, we have our will, and we will fight, not because we want to, but because we have to. Earth's survival depends on us." It was in those moments, in the quiet tension between each battle, that something strange began to happen. Humanity was no longer afraid. They were ready to fight. And though the Empire's fleet was still overwhelming, humanity had found a new strength. They weren't just defending themselves anymore. They were defending their way of life, their planet, their very existence. As the Empire watched from above, they couldn't help but wonder, was humanity truly ready for this fight, or were they merely delaying the inevitable? No one knew for sure, but one thing was certain: the attack had begun. The Empire had struck first, but it wouldn't be long before humanity would strike back. The galaxy was watching. And now, Earth's fate was in the hands of its people. As the Empire's fleet hovered above Earth, the silence was deafening. Ships of unimaginable size and power filled the skies, their dark hulls casting shadows over the planet below. The Earth's military forces, although vast and advanced by their own standards, were nothing compared to the overwhelming might of the Empire. Yet, despite the sheer terror that gripped the world, a glimmer of hope began to rise from the ashes of fear. Humanity was not about to roll over and accept defeat. On the streets, soldiers and civilians alike gathered in groups. News broadcasts continued to report the destruction that had already been wrought, showing cities reduced to rubble, entire fleets of fighter jets destroyed in a matter of minutes. The air was thick with panic, but it was also filled with whispers of something different, something more dangerous to the Empire than any weapon Earth had. People were talking about fighting back, about resisting. And for the first time in a long while, the human race found a common purpose, a resolve that only comes when faced with the brink of extinction. In underground bunkers and secret labs scattered around the world, the brightest minds of Earth's military and scientific communities worked relentlessly to figure out a way to stop the Empire. The truth was clear. Conventional weapons wouldn't cut it. Earth's arsenal, though impressive, was no match for the alien technology the Empire wielded. Yet, as history had shown, humanity was resourceful. They had always found ways to adapt, to survive, and this time would be no different. The first real sign of resistance came from an unexpected source, an old, mothballed warship, the Vanguard, which had been kept in reserve for decades. The ship wasn't the newest or most advanced, but its crew, led by Captain Daniel Harris, had never stopped training. They had never given up on the idea of protecting Earth, no matter the odds. When the orders came to prepare for battle, the crew of the Vanguard was ready. "It's not the ship we have, it's the fight in our hearts," Captain Harris said, rallying his crew. They weren't just a crew anymore. They were humanity's last hope. With the Vanguard ready, Earth's military took its first step toward counterattack. A series of small, agile ships, designed for quick strikes, were dispatched to harass the Empire's fleet. The idea was simple: disrupt their operations, create confusion, and show them that humanity would not just bow down and surrender. The battles were intense, but the enemy ships were relentless. Each attack was met with overwhelming force, and yet humanity fought on. Each small victory, even if it was only a minor inconvenience to the Empire, was a victory in itself. It sent a message: we are here, and we will not go quietly. Meanwhile, the world watched from below. The leaders of Earth's nations held a series of emergency meetings, desperately trying to coordinate a global strategy. But there was something different this time. They had seen their cities burn, their people fall, and yet they weren't talking about surrender anymore. The word resistance was on every tongue. The leaders knew that if Earth was to survive, they would have to rally every human on the planet. Humanity has always faced insurmountable odds, General Stevens said during one broadcast. But we have never given up. And we will not start now. We will stand together. We will fight together. The words spread like wildfire, igniting a new fire in the hearts of Earth's people. Protests against alien occupation turned into organized uprisings. Civilians joined forces with the military to create makeshift resistance cells. People from all walks of life, from scientists and engineers to farmers and students, rallied together, each doing what they could to slow the Empire's advance. But the reality was harsh. The Empire's forces were powerful. Their weapons could level entire cities with a single blast. Each attempt to fight back resulted in more destruction, more losses. Yet for every building destroyed, for every family lost, there were more humans rising to fill the gaps. In the heart of Earth's resistance efforts, a secret weapon was being prepared. Scientists had been working on something that, if successful, might change the course of the war. It was a prototype energy weapon, unlike anything humanity had ever seen. It was still in its early stages, and there were many risks. The weapon was untested, and no one knew if it would even work. But the situation was growing desperate, and humanity had nothing to lose. Captain Harris, aboard the Vanguard, received a message from the scientists. It was clear. The weapon had to be deployed soon, or it would never be finished in time. The pressure was mounting. The Vanguard, with its experienced crew and old but reliable weapons, was now humanity's only chance of delivering this weapon to the heart of the Empire's fleet. The plan was risky, the kind of plan that only desperate people could devise. But humanity was used to desperation. "Prepare the crew for the most dangerous mission of our lives," Captain Harris said. "We may be outnumbered, but we are not out of options. We will strike back. The Empire is not invincible." As the Vanguard and its crew prepared for their daring mission, the tension on Earth was palpable. The skies above were still filled with Empire ships, their presence a constant reminder that Earth's future hung in the balance. But something had shifted. The people of Earth were no longer waiting to be rescued. They were taking matters into their own hands. They were no longer victims. They were fighters. The Empire had struck first, and humanity was now rising to meet them. The world held its breath as humanity's first true counterattack was about to begin. Would it be enough? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain. The battle for Earth had only just begun. As the Vanguard readied itself for the most important mission of its life, humanity's resolve hardened. The Empire had underestimated Earth. They had believed that humanity, with all its divisions and weaknesses, would fall before their might. But what they didn't understand was that Earth's strength was not in its weapons or its armies. It was in its spirit, and that spirit was now being tested. The resistance groups across Earth were growing bolder. Each day brought new strikes, new acts of defiance. Small but coordinated attacks crippled supply lines, and sabotage became the weapon of choice. The Empire's soldiers, once sure of their superiority, began to question the resolve of the humans they were facing. In cities that had been abandoned to the Empire's rule, humanity quietly worked in the shadows, preparing for the day they would fight back openly. In the skies, Captain Harris stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, watching as Earth's forces gathered for the largest offensive yet. The plan was dangerous, and everyone knew it. The Vanguard was a relic, a ship from an era long past, with old technology and a skeleton crew. But it had something the Empire's ships didn't: heart. The crew wasn't just fighting to survive. They were fighting for their families, their homes, and their planet. "Captain, we're ready to launch," the communications officer reported. "The Empire's fleet is still in position. We got a narrow window to hit them hard." Harris nodded grimly. They had one chance to show the Empire that Earth would not go quietly into the night. As the Vanguard powered up its engines, the ship's lights flickered, an old familiar hum filling the air. It was as if the ship itself knew the stakes. "Let's make them regret underestimating us," Harris said to his crew. The battle began almost immediately. The Vanguard and its support fleet of smaller ships broke through Earth's atmosphere, darting toward the heart of the Empire's forces. They moved in the shadows, staying out of sight as much as possible, knowing that a direct confrontation would be suicide. But this wasn't a battle of strength, it was a battle of wits. The humans had the element of surprise, and they intended to use it to the fullest. The Empire's fleet was formidable, but it was also arrogant. They hadn't expected Earth to fight back so soon, and they hadn't anticipated the ingenuity of humanity. As the human fleet approached, they deployed their secret weapon, the prototype energy beam that could pierce even the toughest armor. It was still untested, but there was no turning back now. Captain Harris watched as the first shots from the Empire's ships streaked across space, missing their target by mere inches. It was a reminder of how dangerous this fight would be. But the humans had learned something crucial from their earlier skirmishes. The Empire's arrogance was their greatest weakness. The humans had studied their movements, their tactics. They knew how to exploit their overconfidence. The Vanguard dove into the heart of the Empire's fleet, cutting through the darkness like a blade. Its guns fired, and for the first time, the Empire's ships were forced to react. The sudden resistance threw their forces into chaos. The humans weren't waiting for permission to fight back. They were already doing it. On the ground, the atmosphere was charged with the same energy. Cities that had once been silent under the weight of Empire occupation now buzzed with activity. Civilians took up arms alongside the military, creating a wall of defiance that the Empire could no longer ignore. Resistance cells communicated across encrypted lines, sharing vital intelligence and coordinating attacks. It was a war fought on two fronts, in space and on Earth. The Empire's commanders, caught off guard by the speed and ferocity of the human counterattack, scrambled to respond. But the Vanguard was a ghost, slipping through their defenses. Each shot it fired from its energy cannon sent shockwaves through the Empire's ships, the devastating power leaving trails of destruction in its wake. The enemy was beginning to understand that Earth wasn't just a small, insignificant planet. It was a planet with a fight in its heart. But even as humanity's forces pressed on, the cost of resistance was becoming clear. Earth's cities were burning. Buildings crumbled under the assault of the Empire's firepower. Lives were being lost at an alarming rate. And yet, the humans didn't falter. With each loss, they grew more determined. For every building destroyed, for every soldier fallen, the flame of resistance burned brighter. Captain Harris's voice came over the comms, his tone steady but filled with determination. "We've taken down their flagships. The Empire's command is in disarray. We have them on the run." But there was no celebration. The battle was far from over, and Harris knew that the fight for Earth's survival had just begun. The Vanguard had dealt a blow to the Empire, but it was only the beginning. The real fight was yet to come. The Empire's forces regrouped, realizing that the humans were not going to bow to them. They had underestimated humanity's resilience, and now they would have to pay the price. Back on Earth, the streets filled with the sounds of victory, but the people knew that it was only temporary. There would be more battles, more struggles, more sacrifices, yet they stood united, stronger than ever. The fight for freedom had only just begun. As Captain Harris and his crew looked out into the vastness of space, they knew that this war was far from over. But there was one thing they could be sure of. Earth's people would fight with everything they had, and they would not be easily defeated. The Empire had struck, but humanity had struck back, and they weren't done yet. The momentary victory felt sweet, but the humans knew that it was only the calm before the storm. The Empire was not going to let a small planet like Earth defy them. After their initial shock, the Empire's military leaders convened, plotting their next move. They couldn't afford to let Earth's rebellion spread to other colonies. The Empire needed to crush this uprising once and for all. On Earth, The celebrations from the earlier skirmish were quickly overshadowed by the grim reality of what was to come. Despite the success in space, the Empire was still a vast and powerful force. They had lost a few ships, but they were not going to back down. Instead, they would strike back with everything they had. The next battle would be far more brutal. "We're just a small part of the Empire," said Admiral Garrix, leader of the Imperial fleet. "But Earth's defiance cannot go unpunished. It's time to make them regret it." The Empire mobilized their full force, sending in their most powerful fleets. Thousands of ships, heavily armored and equipped with devastating weapons, were sent to Earth. The numbers alone were enough to strike fear into the hearts of anyone who dared to oppose them. The humans had no choice but to prepare for the worst. Back on Earth, Captain Harris and his crew aboard the Vanguard had no illusions about what was coming. Their small fleet had made a dent in the Empire's plans, but they were far from ready for a full-scale invasion. Their ships were old, their weapons were limited, and their crew, though brave, was stretched thin. "This isn't just another skirmish," Harris said, looking over the battle plans. "We're facing the full weight of the Empire now. We need every advantage we can get." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Resistance fighters scrambled to fortify their positions, and the military made desperate attempts to organize a defensive plan. But no matter how hard they tried, it felt like the Empire's forces were coming at them from every angle. Every city was under threat. Every spaceport, every communication relay was targeted. They couldn't escape the sheer magnitude of the Empire's response. And then the first wave arrived. The Vanguard was stationed near the outskirts of Earth's atmosphere, ready to intercept the Imperial fleet before it could land. Harris knew they would have to hit fast and hard, using their knowledge of the Empire's tactics to strike a blow before the larger ships arrived. But as the first wave of the Empire's ships appeared on the radar, the sheer scale of their fleet was staggering. The Empire's ships were colossal, far larger than anything the humans had ever seen. Their weapons were devastating, and their shields were nearly impenetrable. Earth's fleet, though valiant, was outmatched. The Empire came at them with everything they had: cannon fire, laser beams, and waves of bombers that rained destruction down on the cities below. The battle began almost immediately, but the human fleet's hopes of standing their ground quickly began to fade. The Empire's ships overwhelmed them, one by one, as Earth's forces fought back with everything they had. The Vanguard fired its weapons with precision, striking at the weakest points in the Empire's fleet, but there were too many enemies. On the ground, the chaos was even worse. The Empire's troops stormed cities with deadly force, their soldiers well-trained and relentless. Earth's civilians fought with everything they had, but they were outmatched. The Empire's presence was overwhelming. Tanks, warships, and soldiers moved like a tidal wave, sweeping through Earth's defenses. The once peaceful cities of Earth, now under siege, became battlegrounds. But even in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity's resolve never wavered. Every building that fell, every soldier that died, only fueled their rage. People fought for their homes, for their families, and for the future of Earth. Humanity wasn't going to lie down and die. They were going to fight back, no matter what. Captain Harris watched as the Vanguard took fire from the Empire's most powerful ship, the Dominion. The Vanguard shuddered under the blast, and alarms blared throughout the ship. The damage was severe, but Harris refused to back down. "Get us in position for a counterstrike," Harris barked to his crew. "We're not done yet." The Vanguard lurched forward, dodging fire and moving toward the heart of the Empire's forces. Harris knew that they couldn't match the Empire's firepower, but they could still use their speed and their knowledge of the terrain to their advantage. They wouldn't win by outmatching their enemy. They would win by outsmarting them. On the ground, pockets of resistance remained, clashing with the Empire's soldiers. The battle for Earth was far from over, and it was clear that the human race wasn't about to give up. Every inch of territory gained by the Empire came at a cost, and every defeat made the humans fight harder. As the battle raged on, A new plan began to form in the mind of Captain Harris. It was a long shot, one that could either win them the war or end their resistance completely. The only way to stop the Empire from overrunning Earth was to hit them where it hurt, their communication network. Without it, the Empire's forces would be disorganized, and their ability to coordinate their attacks would be crippled. But getting to the heart of the Empire's communications hub would be no easy feat. The vanguard would have to face the full force of the Empire's fleet, and they would have to do it in a way that would allow the resistance on the ground to continue their fight. Harris knew it was a dangerous mission, but it was their only chance. "Get ready for a new plan," Harris said, staring out at the vast expanse of space. "We've got one shot at this. Make it count." As the human forces regrouped and prepared for the next phase of the fight, there was a moment of quiet. The battle for Earth was just beginning, and there would be no turning back. But for the first time, the humans had a glimmer of hope. The Empire might be powerful, but they had underestimated humanity's will to survive. And that was a mistake they would soon regret. The Empire had not anticipated the stubbornness of humanity. Their attack, overwhelming at first, had expected to crush any hope of resistance before it even had a chance to grow. But humans were proving to be more resilient than the Empire had ever imagined. The Empire's forces controlled the skies, and their troops had stormed many cities, but Earth's spirit was far from broken. In the underground bunkers and hidden military bases across the planet, Earth's leaders were formulating their next steps. Captain Harris and the crew of the Vanguard had become the symbol of humanity's defiance. They had successfully survived the Empire's initial onslaught and were preparing for the next phase of the fight, a counterattack that would send a message to the Empire. Humanity was not easily defeated. "We can't afford to stay defensive any longer," Harris said, pacing back and forth in the command center of the Vanguard. "We need to take the fight to them. If we strike at the heart of their fleet, we can disrupt their control. But we have to be quick." The plan was risky, but it was the only way to level the playing field. The Empire's fleet was formidable, but it wasn't invincible. Their power lay in their ability to communicate and coordinate, and if they could sever that connection, the Empire's forces would be forced into chaos. Harris knew that if they could destroy the central command ship, the Oblivion, they could break the Empire's chain of command, even if only for a short time. The mission was set. A small, elite group of human fighters would board the Vanguard's best fighters and strike at the heart of the Empire's fleet. Their target: the Oblivion, the largest and most powerful command ship in the Empire's arsenal. "We need to hit them fast," said Lieutenant McKinney, Harris' right hand. "We don't have much time before they realize what we're doing. Once they figure out that we're targeting the Oblivion, they'll throw everything they have at us." The human fleet, smaller but quicker and more agile, began to assemble in the dark corners of Earth's orbit. It wasn't just about firepower this time. It was about speed, precision, and surprise. The Empire was used to facing slow, methodical attacks, but the humans had learned to fight on their terms. They would hit hard, disappear into the shadows, and strike again before the Empire had a chance to respond. The next few hours were filled with tension as the crew of the Vanguard made their final preparations. Every human fighter knew what was at stake. If they failed, it would be the end of the fight for Earth. But if they succeeded, it would send shockwaves through the Empire, shaking the foundations of their control. As the attack fleet moved closer to the Empire's massive armada, Harris knew there was no turning back. The Oblivion was heavily guarded by dozens of smaller ships, and the Empire's advanced defenses would make a direct attack nearly impossible. But Harris and his team had an edge. The Empire had underestimated the humans' ability to adapt and innovate under pressure. They were unpredictable, and that made them dangerous. The first wave of fighters, led by Harris himself, moved toward the heart of the enemy fleet. They weaved through the debris left by the earlier battles, dodging laser beams and enemy ships that were eager to prevent any kind of assault. The humans had no illusions about the danger they were facing. Every ship that flew in those first waves knew they might not make it back. As the fighters approached the Oblivion, a massive Imperial battleship loomed in front of them. It was a beast of a ship, armed to the teeth with weaponry that could obliterate anything in its path. But the humans had something the Empire didn't, an intimate knowledge of their own home turf. The humans had prepared a series of diversionary tactics designed to confuse and scatter the Empire's forces. "Engage the decoy drones," Harris commanded, his voice calm but firm. The Vanguard's drones shot out into space, creating false targets and emitting fake distress signals. It was a long shot, but it worked. The Empire's ships began to break formation, scattering in response to the threats that weren't real. In that moment, Harris and his fleet saw their opening. Without wasting a second, the human fighters launched a full assault on the Oblivion. Their weapons fired in unison, precision strikes that targeted weak points in the command ship's defenses. The Empire's ships quickly regrouped, but the damage had been done. The Oblivion shields faltered under the onslaught, and the human fighters pressed their advantage. "We've got a breach," Lieutenant McKinney shouted, his voice filled with excitement. "We're through the outer hull. Now we go for the core." The humans knew that their time was limited. The Oblivion wasn't just a ship, it was the command center of the entire Imperial fleet. Taking it down was the key to breaking the Empire's hold on Earth. The enemy would retaliate fiercely, and the humans would need to move quickly if they hoped to survive. The crew aboard the Vanguard watched as the attack continued. The humans were making incredible progress, pushing deeper into the Oblivion's hull. It was no longer about simple tactics, it was about sheer determination. The Empire had underestimated humanity's ability to fight, and now they were paying the price. "One more push, and we'll have it," Harris muttered to himself. "We finish this, or we don't come back." With a final, coordinated strike, the humans hit the core of the Oblivion with everything they had. The ship's systems began to fail, and the Empire's control of the battle began to slip away. The Vanguard's fighters, battered but not broken, pulled away as the Oblivion's destruction sent shockwaves through the Empire's fleet. The battle wasn't over, but the humans had dealt a crippling blow. The Empire was reeling, and for the first time, it seemed like the tide of war was beginning to turn. The people of Earth could breathe a little easier, but they knew that the hardest part was yet to come. The Vanguard and its fleet had dealt a devastating blow to the Empire, but the war was far from over. The destruction of the Oblivion had sent shockwaves throughout the Empire, shaking their command structure. The humans had proven that they could fight back, and the Empire was determined to crush this new threat before it could grow stronger. In the wake of the destruction, the Empire's response was swift and brutal. New fleets, larger and more powerful, were assembled in the deep recesses of space. The Empire's leaders knew they had to act fast before the rebellion could gain any more ground. Earth had shown its potential as a threat, and the Empire was not going to take that lightly. Captain Harris stood in the command center of the Vanguard, staring at the tactical display as the enemy fleets closed in. Despite their victory, the humans were severely outnumbered. They had no illusions about their chances, but there was a fire in their hearts, a drive to protect their home, their families, their future. "The Empire will not stop coming," Harris said, his voice firm. "We've made them bleed, but we can't afford to let up now. If we want to keep Earth, we have to finish this." The human fleet was battered from the earlier battle, but they had done something the Empire didn't expect. They had taken down the Oblivion, breaking the Empire's chains of command. Now, the humans had a chance to disrupt the Empire's dominance and force them into a more chaotic, disorganized war. "We can't hold out here forever," Lieutenant McKinney said, analyzing the incoming enemy ships. "They're sending reinforcements. We'll be outnumbered soon, and we won't have the resources to keep fighting at this rate." Harris turned to his team, the crew who had become his family. He knew their courage was what would make the difference. Humanity was not just fighting for survival, it was fighting to show the galaxy that they were a force to be reckoned with. "Prepare the last line of defense," Harris ordered. "We'll hold them off as long as we can. "We're not running." As the enemy forces approached, the humans on the vanguard and other ships prepared for the battle of their lives. The space between them was dark, cold, and unforgiving, but it was theirs to protect. The strategy was simple: hit the Empire hard and fast, break their formation, and buy enough time for reinforcements from Earth to arrive. The first wave of Empire ships appeared, their black, hulking shapes blocking out the stars. Massive cruisers, destroyers, and battleships moved in perfect formation, but the humans knew the Empire was used to having everything in control. This time, they would fight like nothing the Empire had ever seen. "Engage," Harris shouted. The human fighters dove into the battle with renewed energy, launching their weapons and strafing the enemy ships. The Empire's fleet responded quickly, but their ships were not prepared for the hit-and-run tactics the humans had developed. The human fleet darted around the Empire's larger ships, taking out key weapon systems, launching missiles into vulnerable points, and causing chaos among the Empire's ranks. "We've taken down their lead destroyer," shouted Lieutenant McKinney. "We're making a dent in their formation." But it wasn't enough. The Empire was far too strong, and more ships continued to pour in, overwhelming the humans. The Vanguard's shields flickered, and alarms blared throughout the ship. The battle was taking a heavy toll on their fleet, and they couldn't keep up with the constant waves of reinforcements. "Hold on, everyone," Harris shouted. "Don't let them break our lines. We have to give Earth time to respond." The human fleet fought desperately, refusing to back down, even as their numbers dwindled. Captain Harris and his crew pushed forward, determined to defend their home at all costs. Their strength, their unity, and their will to survive were unmatched. But even they knew that the Empire was a colossal force, and no matter how hard they fought, their resources were limited. Suddenly, a flash of light erupted from the distance. Earth's reinforcements had arrived. The Earth Defense Fleet, massive and equipped with powerful new weapons, entered the fray, charging straight into the Empire's forces. The Empire had not anticipated such a sudden shift in the balance of power. "We have backup," Lieutenant McKinney yelled. "The tide's turning." The reinforcements from Earth began to wreak havoc on the Empire's rear lines, cutting off supply routes and bombarding their fleet with devastating firepower. The Empire's once unified formation began to break apart as the humans gained the upper hand. The reinforcements weren't just here to defend Earth. They were here to take the fight directly to the Empire and finish what they had started. The Empire's commanders quickly realized they had underestimated humanity's resolve. Despite their vast power, the Empire had made one critical mistake. They had not anticipated how fiercely humans would fight for their survival. The battle was no longer just about space or ships. It was about a message that echoed across the galaxy. Earth was not weak, and humanity would never surrender. With their forces split and their command structure in chaos, the Empire began to retreat. It was not a full victory. Not yet, but it was the first sign that humanity had the power to drive the Empire from their home. Earth had survived the worst, and now they had the strength to push the Empire back. But Captain Harris knew this was just the beginning. The Empire would not stop. They had learned something important today. Humanity would never go down without a fight. The war was far from over, but the humans had proven they were ready for whatever came next. "Prepare for the next phase," Harris said, his voice filled with determination. "We've given them a taste of what we can do. Now, let's finish this." The Empire, now reeling from the unexpected defeat, had to regroup. Their ships, once sleek and overwhelming, were damaged, and their morale was at an all-time low. Captain Harris and his crew had dealt a blow that would resonate throughout the galaxy. The message was clear. Humanity was not a species to be taken lightly. In the aftermath of the battle, humanity's victory did not go unnoticed. The surviving Empire ships retreated into the shadows of space, licking their wounds, while the humans took stock of their losses. The Vanguard was still operational, but barely, its hull scarred from the intense battle. Across their fleet, similar damage had been done. The fight had taken everything from them, but it had also shown them something incredible, what they were capable of. "We did it," Lieutenant McKinney said, her voice full of disbelief. "We held them off." Captain Harris looked out at the wreckage of the Empire's retreating fleet. It wasn't over, but they had sent a message. The Empire may have the firepower, but humanity had something they had never anticipated, a never-give-up spirit. "We've only begun," Harris said, his tone sharp with determination. "The Empire won't stop just because we beat them in one battle. They're going to come back with everything they've got." He was right. The Empire may have retreated for now, but Captain Harris knew they were not finished. Their thirst for control was unyielding, and their forces would be back. But something had changed. The humans had proven their strength, their unity, and their refusal to bow to anyone. They had sent a clear signal across the galaxy. Earth would not fall without a fight. Back on Earth, the entire planet was on edge. The news of the battle spread like wildfire. People everywhere were watching their screens, anxiously awaiting any updates on the war. It had been the longest and most uncertain period of their lives. But when the broadcast came, humanity's hearts swelled with pride. The Empire had attacked with overwhelming force, yet the humans had fought back with courage and strength that no one could have predicted. The media buzzed with excitement. Analysts, politicians, and military leaders began to prepare for what was next. But in the streets, people were talking about something else. They were talking about their survival, their strength. Humanity had faced an enemy that seemed unbeatable, and not only had they survived, they had won. "I told you humanity wasn't weak," one reporter said, his voice filled with awe. "They stood against an empire and struck back." For the first time in the history of the galaxy, the Empire's dominance was being questioned. The humans had become a symbol of defiance, a beacon of hope for others who had suffered under the Empire's rule. Everywhere, there was talk of unity, of working together to build something greater, something that could challenge the might of the Empire. In the midst of all this celebration, Captain Harris was already thinking ahead. He knew the Empire wouldn't take this defeat lying down. They would rebuild, and they would come back stronger than ever. But this time, humanity was ready. "We'll be ready for them," Harris said to his crew. "This fight isn't over until we win, and that means we fight until the last of us stands. The Empire underestimated us once, and that was their biggest mistake. It won't happen again." The humans had done something that no one had ever thought possible. They had pushed back the might of the Empire and sent them running. But it was only the beginning. Now, humanity had to continue to fight, to hold their ground, and to protect their future. The fleet was battered, but its resolve was unshaken. The Vanguard, though scared, stood tall among the remaining human ships. Its crew was tired, but they knew what they were fighting for. Earth was not just their home, it was their future. And as long as they drew breath, they would fight to defend it. But as Harris gazed out into the vastness of space, he couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The war was not over, and the Empire would be back. They would come with more force, more soldiers, more ships. The humans had won this battle, but the war for Earth's future was far from won. "They'll come again," Harris said softly to himself. "But when they do, we'll be ready." And so, as the final remnants of the Empire's fleet vanished into the depths of space, humanity began to rebuild. Their victory had sent a shockwave through the galaxy, and the Empire knew one thing for certain: humanity was a force to be reckoned with. They had crossed a line, and now there was no turning back. The Empire's last stand was coming, and this time, humanity would be the one to decide the fate of the galaxy.